Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Purdue Exponents official podcast. This might be the fifth time I've said this. We're having some recording difficulties today. But hey, we've got a very nice episode for you today, a little bit different. Isn't that right, co-host Vipple?
Yes, it is. Very special conversation. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We'll get to that. Wow, we've recorded this at least 4 times now. So this might seem manufactured and inauthentic, but
It's never manufactured and inauthentic when it's Vipple.
We got to keep it original for you guys, our fans, the listeners.
Yes.
Maybe we'll talk about something new. Let's briefly talk about your week and my week.
Yeah. Pretty hectic week. I had my midterms, as I'm assuming a lot of our listeners also did. Came out on the other side of that. Management 305 has not gotten the better of me yet.
Good work, man. That sounds fun.
Thank you. I'm proud
jealous.
of myself.
I wish I could have done that.
Yeah. No. Today's my... No, yeah. You don't want this life.
I'm capping.
But today's my treat day, I guess. So I'm gonna go back home, watch Too Much Atlanta,
Good show.
Eat the cake that's in my fridge.
Why do you have cake in your fridge?
Friend's roommate's birthday from a couple of days ago, and I'm a slob, and
Happy belated birthday, Vipple's roommate.
Yeah, shout out Nishad.
Alrighty.
How was your week though?
Oh, thank you for asking.
Hey, gotta be cordial.
Last week I escaped West Lafayette and went to Orlando, Florida.
Yes, you did.
To celebrate my girlfriend's 21st birthday with her family. We went to Universal Studios. That was like the big thing because they got the Halloween horror nights going on.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, so they have like haunted houses after hours that you can go in.
That's fun.
There was a Five Nights at Freddy's one. There's a Terrifier one. Jason Voorhees. Pretty cool.
That's very fun. So there wasn't much rush, you said?
There was a rush at night so there's like two
so.
different parts of Universal. There's like two like parks, I guess.
Yeah.
One park is just regular Universal. The other one is like transformed into like horror nights. So there's like scary actors walking around everywhere, and
that's fun.
So that part was busy. That part was busy. But
yeah.
Did
you do anything?
Wasn't.
Did you do anything else in Orlando? I was gonna ask.
Oh, we went downtown.
That's fun. Is there
on Halloween?
Is there much else?
There's like bars and restaurants.
That's fun.
So we walked downtown in costumes. Saw everybody else in costumes, but Universal was like the main thing, and I'd never been before.
It's an experience, much like Disney World is.
You've been to Universal?
Yeah, I have. I've been a couple of times actually.
This was my first time. I've been to Disney World.
Yeah. I prefer Disney World personally.
Really?
It is just because of the magic.
It's been a while since I've been to Disney World. I remember still having fun.
Yeah.
The most recent time I went, which was like freshman year.
You're never too old for Disney World, I don't think.
And you're definitely not too old for Universal. I mean, I think Universal is slightly geared more towards adults.
Yeah, I guess so.
Kind of. Not really, but like kind of.
No, yeah, I see that.
But it made me feel like a kid again, part of it.
Yeah, that's the appeal of it.
There was a Spider-Man ride, and I was on it, and thought I was enjoying myself a little too much.
Yeah, I cried when I went to Disney World last time, and I was way too old to be crying there. But
I mean, if you have like joy in your heart,
exactly,
you will enjoy it.
Exactly, that's what
you won't enjoy spending the money probably.
Oh yeah, or the lines.
You'll have to get past both of those things. But yeah, I mean, like they put a lot of care into those things. Like, the Harry Potter parts of Universal are crazy.
Oh yeah,
like,
and I'm not even a Harry Potter head.
Insane. There's like a Marvel part. There's like a Looney Tunes part, a Simpsons part. Like they go crazy. They go into a lot of detail.
Oh, now that you mention, I do remember. Have you been in the Harry Potter one where there's all like the portraits across?
Yeah, and they're all talking to you.
Oh
like, you just walk around Hogwarts. You're like, this is crazy. Like,
I mean,
it's in Harry Potter.
It's magic. I mean, you know how it works, but like just to be in it just feels like magic. Because so much of it is just geared to just making you have like this incredible experience. It felt
nice. It was a nice little break.
I bet it did. I'm sorry you're back here, by the way.
It's okay. That's just life.
Highs and lows.
Just like a roller coaster. Just like the Velocicoaster at Universal Studios.
Shout out. I don't think I've been on that.
That one's crazy. It was really fun.
I'm kind of scared of roller coasters.
Are you really? Yeah. I mean, I am too, but in a good way. Like when I'm on it, I'm like, this is so scary. But then when I'm done, I was like, that was so cool.
Yeah, I feel like it's a very easy fear to kick. I just need to get into it. It seems like the sort of thing I'd have fun with.
That was so cool.
But speaking of roller coasters, we have a roller coaster of a conversation here today for you guys.
So you said that in the last recording. It doesn't really fit, but I appreciate
It doesn't
the transition
fit, but
because it's a pretty tame, well-constructed conversation.
It is,
actually.
But yeah, you're not good. Okay, yeah, maybe roller coaster isn't the right word for this, but I had to segue somehow. All right.
A Rivet writer, Bethany Lee, sat down with Melissa Fraterrigo, who is a lecturer here at Purdue and also at Butler.
Mm-hmm. She recently came out with a book called The Perils of Girlhood, which is what Bethany spoke to her about. Very insightful conversation, very interesting conversation. I'm not the target demographic for a book called Perils of Girlhood, but it was a very insightful conversation nonetheless. I feel like I learned a lot. Hopefully you guys do as well.
Yeah, I attended. She read excerpts of Perils of Girlhood, I think 2 weeks ago, and I actually saw Bethany there, and we sat next to each other and listened. And it was a really interesting read. It's a creative nonfiction book, a compilation of essays she's written over her life that deal with,
girlhood,
the perils of girlhood and
motherhood as well.
And there's a lot to that, and they get to the heart of that, the root of that in this conversation, and it's just really nice. It's really nice to hear a really
and
well thought out interview. Bethany asks some good questions. Melissa gives great answers, and we're open to do more episodes like this where we have Rivet writers or just people interviewing artists, authors, something like that. Really engaging conversations for you guys to listen to.
Yeah, this is in association with the Rivet, by the way, as we
Rivet.
Continue to embark on our journey of shedding light on artists, local and or otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, we hope you enjoy this conversation. I know I did, and hopefully we make this a recurring thing, shed light on a lot of other different artists. But yeah, thank you to Melissa Fraterrigo for taking the time to sit down with us and give us her opinions, her thoughts, and her words.
Absolutely. It's really awesome that she was able to agree to this. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So hope take a listen, guys. Hope you enjoy.
Okay, I wrote down some questions. They range from sort of like really in depth where I quote some stuff in your essay, like something that kind of stood out to me, and then just like general questions about like kind of what this book is for, or like what it is for you and for your audience and such.
Right.
So I think my first question would be just kind of tell me about yourself. Like, what creative work do you do? I know that you're a writer and a teacher and a mom.
Mm-hmm.
So could you just tell me about like those aspects of your life a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So I've been teaching here at Purdue since 2022, but this is not the only school where I've taught. And I actually started as a high school and junior high English teacher before going back to graduate school and earning my MFA in creative writing, and with an emphasis on fiction. So I started really as a fiction writer. I started teaching at Southern Utah University and at Penn State, both in Altoona and in Erie, Pennsylvania. They have just different sister campuses. And I've always loved teaching. I've always loved stories. And yet during the pandemic, despite a great affection for fiction, I just found that I wasn't drawn to stories in the way that I had previously. Some of that could be because I had written a young adult novel and I couldn't find a home for it. I couldn't find an agent for it, and I couldn't find a publisher for it. So it really kind of, I think, upset me. And obviously the world was pretty insane during the pandemic. And what I was able to read and what I was drawn to were true stories, creative nonfiction, essays, moments where I had the sense that an author was trying to kind of puzzle through something about their life. So they weren't necessarily coming to the page with some sort of resolution, but rather they were turning to the page as a place of unearthing. And that kind of started this journey of writing essays. You mentioned that in addition to teaching, I'm also a mom, and the Perils of Girlhood really is a lesson about girlhood. I mentioned it. The book started during the pandemic, and that was the same time that I was noticing my daughters really struggling with their sense of identity. Sometimes they were bringing up a fair bit of self-criticism and concerns about the way that their bodies looked. And so many of those criticisms were familiar to me because they were things that I had struggled with when I was the same age that they were at the time. They were just getting ready to become adolescents. And so I figured the best way to kind of help them navigate this time in life would be to explore my own life, look at the lessons of girlhood that I had experienced, and kind of explore, why did I believe what I did? And then how could I use those stories and that insight to help my daughters?
So something that like kind of stood out to me when I read the book is like, as I was reading, I was kind of thinking about my mom and being like, this is like her girlhood too, you know, like she is living her life at the same time as like I am mine, but just at different stages, you know?
Right.
And I really like how you kind of like blend those together, motherhood and girlhood. Yeah. And so I know you dedicated your book to your girlfriends, you said, and I thought that was like kind of a fun and interesting thing.
Yeah.
So can you explain like what you meant with that? Did you mean your daughters or did you just mean women?
I think it is pretty open. I mean, initially I did think my girlfriends because, you know, you're born into a certain family, but you choose your friends. And I think about all the highs and lows of life, and my girlfriends have just remained a constant for sure. But I think at some points in my life also, my daughters are my girlfriends or will be my girlfriends. Doesn't mean that that's all the time. So it's a way of, I think, maybe generalizing.
Kind of like it can have meaning for anybody, anyone going through girlhood. Can you explain like, how do you think that womanhood or motherhood and girlhood kind of influence one another? Or do you think there's like a break between them?
I think that we carry with us all of our experiences, even from when we're very young. That doesn't mean that you're conscious of everything, but I still feel like you carry little shards of who you were when you were, you know, sitting in the third grade classroom and remembering what it felt like maybe when the teacher called on you and you didn't have the answer. So those feelings are always with you. And I think that we draw upon that knowledge throughout our lives. Sometimes it's a building block, like we can add on to that sense of maybe shame or even pride if something, if in some way, shape, or form you felt really fueled by an experience in your youth. But I think that oftentimes we have an opportunity, especially as parents, to use our lives in a fashion that allows not just others to learn from our experiences, but for us to touch upon those prior selves that we once were and take that knowledge and take that that realization forward and kind of continue to build on it so that we're always, it's kind of like when you're building a snowman, you know, like you start with that snowball and then you're pushing it in a bank of snow and it's getting larger and larger. And so I think we always have these opportunities to be aware of ourselves and our place in the world and consider why do I believe what I do and how might other people be empowered by my own knowledge.
Like, I think like when I went to your reading at Stewart Center a few weeks ago, and you were talking about like how in COVID you just started writing like one essay. I think it was More Like Dad.
Exactly.
And I was interested in how like it originally was just that one essay. And then you kind of, it seemed like you realized like, oh, like I'm learning about myself in doing this. And it kept building and building. And it created like an entire narrative sort of, but it wasn't linear. It jumped around.
Yes.
So can you explain why you chose to do that sort of format? Like kind of like analyzing through sections of time.
I don't know that I had a choice. I feel like that's the kind of way that my brain works. I don't know that I don't think any of us actually are, that our minds, that our memories follow a linear path.
Mm-hmm.
We're always kind of jumping around because you are connecting with the present moment, but that present moment is also going to slingshot to prior situations and experiences. So for me, when I'm writing, I'm always simply trying to follow the story, and I'm trying to really listen to the energy and what I'm drawn to. So you have to pay attention to the page. So in More Like Dad, for instance, which kind of talks about, it was the first essay I wrote, but it's actually now the fifth essay in the Perils of Girlhood.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of details my father's somewhat volatile anger that has definitely mellowed now with time. But it also, as I was exploring what it was like growing up with my dad's temper and how I felt like by being perfect, I might be able to kind of control his outbursts. I also discovered that in the present day, my daughters, again, as almost adolescents, I discovered that I was sometimes losing my temper around them.
Mm-hmm.
So I started with that experience of me as a child, reliving my dad's anger, and then discovered that there was a connection in the present day in my own life. So I think when you're writing creative nonfiction, hopefully you are also bringing with you some reflection.
Mm-hmm.
You're considering what application does this have in my life now, and how can I kind of better piece together these different moments in time.
Yeah. I think a really good example of that is like your title essay, The Perils of Girlhood, which we were discussing in my creative writing class about your reading, and they asked like, oh, what did you think about it? And I mentioned like the braided essay. It just felt like a really, like you were saying, like it blends time together, and it shows your mind sort of making those connections and like how you learn from your own experiences. So what function do you think that specific form of essay like held for this book?
I think when we're writing about challenging material, and then and certainly, as I mentioned, that this book kind of really is exploring the lessons of girlhood for my daughter. So it's really a search for understanding, so that I can better assist them. So when I'm exploring something that I don't have an answer to, something like The Perils of Girlhood that begins with that researched strand about the murders of Abigail and Liberty, and this idea of the fear that women live with. This is something that I don't know. I don't know what I think about it. I don't know what to do with this knowledge. So there are a lot of questions that I'm bringing to the page, rather than just sticking with my story or just sticking with Liberty and Abigail's story, which would just be one element. By bringing in two additional threads. So right now in The Perils of Girlhood, the title essay, we've got the braided essay includes three different strands. We have the murder of the girls in Delphi. We have my experience being a mother,
Mm-hmm.
both in the present day and then also farther back when my daughters were younger, and then also the fear culture in the 1980s. So by having those juxtapositions and also that white space, you're inviting the reader into this place. You're inviting them to help you figure something out, because I don't come to that essay, I don't know that I come to any of the essays with a conclusion. It's starting more from a place of curiosity. And so by using that form, the reader has the opportunity to come to some of their own conclusions or perhaps reflect on their own lives. I'm always fixated on this notion of welcoming my reader into the space and hopefully encouraging them to consider what they might do with this story, with this essay.
Yeah, I like I said earlier, like how this made me think about my mom. And like, I think that's such like a beautiful thing that like I read this and it feels so universal, but also like as a woman, like, you know how maybe overwhelming and isolating girlhood may feel, but you also have the knowledge that everybody who has experienced girlhood has probably experienced many of these things. And especially I think this is interesting because I happen to be a twin sister.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah. And similarly, my sister also had a seizure like problem when she was younger. So that when you read that at Stewart Center, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so similar. And it kind of made me think about my mom even more. Like, what was her experience like? And did she ever consider back to her girlhood when she was handling that? So how does like being a mom, especially of twins, kind of tell you about the individual experience of girlhood? Because I think it's interesting when you see two people who are the same, you know, quote unquote, and they're living in the same environment, but they grow differently. And like, I'm just wondering what that taught you about girlhood.
I mean, I think in my own family, I was the middle child, an older brother, younger sister. And I was, as a mom, I was really conscious of the fact that I never wanted to compare my daughters, especially because they were twins. I never dressed them similarly, ever. The only things that they had that were similar were things that they had either both chosen or somebody had gifted them.
My mom also did that.
I mean,
she refused to dress us the same.
Absolutely. I just thought, you know, and anytime that a family member would give them something that was the same, identical, I would only dress them in that when those family members were around. So it's ironic, therefore, then that my daughters still tend to compete against one another and compare themselves. And so I do wonder, now that you're bringing this up, does that have more to do with simply girlhood? You know, I think sometimes something that comes out in the book is this idea of sometimes not feeling great about yourself and questioning your own worth. And I think that's just human nature, but I'm not writing about all humans. I'm writing about girlhood. And so I think that sometimes when we do question ourselves or we don't feel great about who we are, sometimes it's easier to take those criticisms out on other people or to, to play that comparison game. It's almost a backhanded way of being cruel to yourself.
Yeah, I mean, like, I remember several passages in your essays where you were talking about your sister Beth, and it's almost like vying for. It's like a perfection game, but your opponent is really yourself, and like, you know, seeing the other person succeeding kind of makes you feel more down upon yourself rather than, you know, necessarily angry that they succeeded. You might just be mad that you didn't. And I think that speaks a lot to the nature of like girlhood, where it's almost ingrained in you to self-criticize, and it kind of takes a lot of effort and work to get out of that mindset. So
I agree with that. We should talk about that one a little bit more. I mean, how it's ingrained that
I find for example, it might take me a lot of effort to truly believe that maybe an accomplishment is because of my own work.
Mm-hmm.
Like for me, I would think of every other factor that could have given me an advantage. It's not so easy for me to attribute to my successes to just myself.
And I think a lot of that comes back to just our cultural expectations of women. You know, we are supposed to be in the shadows. We're supposed to remain small, and polite, and, you know, don't speak unless somebody asks you to speak up. So I think some of that's just cultural.
Mm-hmm. How do you take like those thoughts when you're going into caregiving or mothering your daughters?
I question myself a lot, and I don't know if that always serves a situation. And sometimes that means that a situation is over, it's been dealt with, and I'm still thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also where essay writing comes in, because I bring some of that curiosity to the page.
Mm-hmm.
Why did I act the way that I did? You know, was there something else that maybe I could have said? I just think that as a parent, if you can be as present as possible, if you're bringing to every situation as much of kind of your full focus and your full self, that can be fruitful for all.
Yeah. I'm going to veer to like a little bit more of a specific point, because this just stuck out to me when I was reading. I think like in girlhood, kind of viewing womanhood or motherhood, it can feel very daunting. And like in your essay, On the Verge of Being, you write about girls and their bodies specifically, which I think is a very relatable experience throughout girlhood. And the one quote that stuck out to me was, it was, quote, "We know how to be girls. We know what's expected of us. We cannot expect the women who forget their bodies and haunt our futures." And this, like, it just stuck out to me in its relatability and, like, I guess almost a shameness to be related, like, to find that relatable. And it was just so raw and real. So can you tell me what it happens when a woman forgets her body?
I think in that situation, I was, so that story, On the Verge of Being, is told from 2 points of view. We've got a first person plural, that we, where I've grouped myself along with other 8th grade girls. And then there's also an I, and that's where I stand apart from the first person plural. And in that situation, I think I'm simply talking about this fixation on appearance and on looks that I can so remember being a part of when I was in junior high. And the way that my friends were all a part of that as well, talking about dieting, talking about, you know, the boys that were hopefully going to be interested in us, what we could do to make them more interested in us, and the ways that we used popular culture to kind of support some of those beliefs and what we thought we were supposed to be like. So I think when I bring up the situation of women forgetting their bodies, I'm talking about some of the other peripheral characters, like that teacher, Mrs. I think Bedna, in the piece, and how these were other women that were in the essay that the communal narrators are exposed to, and they really don't want to ever imagine that they are going to be the same way. They can't imagine themselves ever forgetting or moving away from this notion of this fixation on appearance.
Or like maybe like they can't imagine, like it's more like tying physical appearance to value.
Yes.
And like finding a woman who doesn't do that is kind of a scary thing, because as growing up, you kind of like, you learn that that's where your value comes from, or not that it should be, but that's kind of what society has been telling.
Yeah.
And I think it's a scary thing to like see a woman who's especially like older than you, because you're kind of looking at your future, to see who is completely like shifted that notion of value to something else.
And I think also when you're younger, you've got tunnel vision.
Mm-hmm.
You imagine, everybody imagines they're going to live forever.
Yeah.
Everybody imagines nothing bad will ever happen to them.
Yeah.
And, things like, who so-and-so being my friend, or, getting a good haircut or something like that. Those things feel monumental because, as you say, it's connected to how you value yourself, because you can't imagine, and maybe in that situation, those girls were not offered another way to kind of demonstrate that value, or they chose not to value themselves through any other way except their looks.
Yeah. Like I know you had like a playlist for your book, which I listened to because my parents are really into like Pink Floyd, New Order, The Cure. So I really like that music. And it got me thinking like you really add like sprinkled in a lot of like pop culture and media stuff in your essays, and it made it very like just kind of fun to read and stuff, atmospheric. Can you explain like how media interacts with girlhood or your memories and womanhood?
Yeah. So, and this kind of goes back a little bit to the conception of the book. Initially, I had drafted about 10 or 12 short essays that were highly researched, fixated on a particular type of pop culture from the 80s or 90s. So everything from the 16 Candles to the Rape by Deception from Revenge of the Nerds to Judy Blume's Forever, the dad characters on a couple different sitcoms, and Little House on the Prairie, the relationship that Laura had with her father. So I initially imagined that there would be these brief essays that I was going to place before and after each of the longer essays. They were initially written in the second person, so from that you point of view, and they would serve to kind of introduce a pop culture element that might have just appeared in that essay, and then it would also conclude it. And while that was initially how I envisioned the book, and at one point that's what the manuscript looked like, I didn't keep those kind of nonfiction asides as part of the manuscript because I thought it worked better. A reader helped me realize that my stories needed to kind of be front and center. So I folded in some of those elements. I do think, like you said, it adds kind of an atmosphere, and it also helps us understand an era a little bit more, because some of the messages of girlhood are connected with the media that you consume. So, I mean, you could consider right now your own girlhood, if you were interested, probably was also influenced by what you chose to surround yourself with.
So you said like the stuff that you analyzed in those 10 to 12 essays, like it sounds like a lot of them had to do with like a father character on the show, or like, can you explain more like what was it about those pieces of media that you decided to analyze them?
Well, initially they all somehow appeared in the essay. So then I took that item and did some research about it. So I think there might have been a couple where I started with the research and, worked to see if I could insert that into the essay itself. But most of them, the essay was written first. There was a touch point where I maybe touch on 16 Candles or touch on the Judy Blume's Forever or something like that. And that was what offered me the impulse to go ahead and do that research.
Yeah, I think it gives me like an excuse to think about like how the media has influenced my girlhood, specifically with just how prevalent like social media and everything is. I'm sure for your daughters too, like it's everywhere, it's unavoidable. And I wonder like what the benefits are of having that introspective viewpoint to kind of be like, how did this influence my growing up?
And I almost wonder if it would be nowadays, if it would be next to impossible to do that work. Because social media, as you said, is just it's just rampant. It's so much a part of our lives. It's a little bit different, when I was growing up, you had TV, you had cable, you had movies, you had music, but you had to work to expose yourself to those things, whether that be, turning on a television set or, being in a car so you could turn on the radio. Obviously, we had our CD Walkmans and stuff like that. But for the most part, so much of the media was confined to the home or to a place. Now with our iPhones, we're carrying that with us everywhere, which means we're not only constantly exposed to something, but we're exposed to something in a way that we're not really conscious of.
I think also something that media does, I think for girls specifically, is it kind of shows you what quote unquote girlhood should be. And I think having that constant exposure is oh, I'm not living girlhood as they are or how it should be. And I think that can be really damaging to actually just being okay with yourself and experiencing life as a kid.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think, I talk a little bit about the comparisons that I made growing up with my sister and the way that my daughters can compete against each other. It's an altogether different story when you are comparing yourself to somebody you're seeing behind the glass screen in your pocket.
Yeah, that's for sure. Definitely very prevalent now.
Yeah.
I know we talked a little bit before we started recording about you going to, on your, I guess, book tour, speaking, and I follow your Substack and I read your essays. So
thank you.
Yeah. But I know you mentioned that you're going to be doing a reading with your parents there for the first time. How do you feel about that?
As I mentioned, this one maybe has me a little bit more nervous. This reading has me a little more nervous because leading up to the book's release, I did a fair bit of thinking about how I would best present the book to the world, to a community of listeners or readers who wouldn't have necessarily read the essays or might have read one or two, but hadn't read it in its entirety. Because the book is a memoir and essays, as you mentioned, it kind of jumps around in time. So each essay or chapter can stand alone. Many of them have been published by themselves. But when you read the book in the order that I've arranged it, it still has that same sense of a memoir, of a whole person's life. So it marches in a chronological order. And I found it was most helpful to start from, to introduce readers by starting from the first essay that I wrote about, which is More Like Dad, where I'm talking about my dad's anger and how I'm beginning to notice my own temper as a mother of twin daughters, and then how some of those experiences caused me to behave in a particular way. I became somewhat of a people pleaser. Again, this is because I felt like with my dad's anger, I could kind of control it by being better, by performing, by being a perfectionist. And so I started to kind of twist myself into what other people wanted, oftentimes men. So I begin by reading a little bit of that essay, The Perils of Girlhood, specifically about a section that takes place when my dad kind of blows his top because we are having a hard time getting our boat out of the water. I read that last month as well from Stu. So tomorrow I'm not going to be reading that section. And I'm not going to talk so much about my dad's temper. I'm not going to talk so much about my family because I also I'm respectful of the fact that my parents, everybody in my life, they have done the very best they could with the tools that they were given. My dad lost his own father when he was very young. And so he grew up during a kind of uncertain time within his family. And so that kind of uncertainty can cause you to have outbursts or to want to control things that are beyond your control. So I don't hold that against him, but it'll be a little awkward tomorrow when I try and introduce this idea of girlhood, but I don't really place it in my family, even though between you and I do think a lot of it started in my own nuclear family.
Right. Do you think writing the essays like allowed you to make that connection? Like with your dad and like the reason for that anger or the reason for your anger?
Yeah, I think it's also really helped me come to that place of grace, to have that grace for him and that grace for myself too. That realization again that I don't hold his temper against him. I don't hold some of the things that either of my parents or loved ones have ever done. I don't hold that against them. Everyone is human, even our parents, and sometimes that can be hard to realize. And we can also offer that same grace to ourselves and realizing, hey, I don't have to be perfect. And you know what? I don't have any control over how this particular situation shakes out.
So just overall, what do you think you learned from taking this journey and writing this book?
I think I've learned a lot about how interconnected all of our experiences are. And how we can use those moments if we really pay attention and reflect back on our lives. We can use those to guide us into the future, even if it's, the great unknown, which the future always is.
Mm-hmm. How have you used like those learning moments? Like, can you think of any application that you've used those moments in your life?
I think just even going back to my daughters, the book has generated some conversations about things that I didn't have with my mom. I mean, in the 90s, we never talked about things like consent. And so the book has generated some dialogue around maybe some less than comfortable topics. But in the process of having those kinds of conversations, my daughters get to know me in a different way. I'm not just mom. I am also a human. It kind of goes back to how you were talking about your own mom, and you see the interconnectedness of being female and what we carry with us.
Yeah. Okay, so I have one final question, unless there's anything else that you think we should cover. But what do you hope that readers take away from the Perils of Girlhood?
I would love it if the book also offers readers the opportunity to not just reflect on their lives, what they're carrying around, what they could possibly offer somebody else. You never know that the very thing that somebody might need is a story from your own life. And I would love it if readers were to do some of that reflecting, connect with somebody else, share that story, and then offer themselves the grace of realizing that it's all interconnected. The highs and lows of life. It all offers us a learning opportunity, and we can choose to see it as such.
I think that's a really powerful thing, to be able to like see the connections and still like give yourself the grace of realizing that it's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's hopefully on a good day what we can all offer ourselves, right? That little bit of grace.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for talking to me.
It was so much fun. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you again to Bethany and to Melissa Fraterrigo. Again, just a really nice conversation.
Very informative, very insightful, especially as someone who doesn't have that experience firsthand. It's really important to expose yourself to different perspectives, I think, at least from my point of view. And it's so like literature like this and art like this is so important. And for that to be coming out of local areas is so, I mean, I think it really, running the Rivet has made me realize how you know, how much proximity I have to so many great minds. And I think I've spoken about that before, but yeah, Melissa Fraterrigo is definitely one of them.
It's grateful. I feel grateful that, we were able to even listen to her share her thoughts like that, and that we get to share that with everyone.
Yeah.
And that she took the time. So yeah, we hope you enjoyed that. We hope to do more episodes like this.
Absolutely.
And we'll see you guys next week.